A good bulk is the fastest way to build muscle as a skinny guy. But there's a problem. Eating enough food every day feels impossible. And I truly thought that until I fixed my appetite. And now I'm more jacked than ever. This video is a complete step-by-step guide to help you fix your appetite so you can always eat more. Let's get into it. So the problem that we're trying to solve is that you have no appetite. And I know exactly how this feels. You're trying to get bigger, you're trying to eat more food, but it just feels impossible to eat so many calories because when you're trying to bulk up, you're trying to get bigger, you have to eat a lot more food than what you're normally comfortable with. So how do we solve this problem? Well, we have to realize that having no appetite isn't the actual root cause of why you can't eat enough food. It is the main symptom of a much bigger problem. And in fact, I think there's 4 problems that we have to solve in order to get a better appetite. You're either constantly feeling full, you have too much food to eat at once, you don't have enough time to eat the food, or you don't have enough energy to eat the food. Now, I want to make this super clear. This is not solved by your training or your stress management or the splits or the exercises you do in the gym. This is solved with the diet. This is a diet problem, absolutely. And so all 4 of these are separate problems, but they're all related to the foods you're eating, the quality of the food, when you eat the food, etc. If you're constantly feeling full, this is a matter of having too much food in totality or having poor meal timing. Having too much food at once, pretty obvious, right? We don't want to have massive meals every single time. If you don't have enough time to eat, this is a time management problem with your diet. And if you don't have enough energy to eat, this is a recovery problem in between training sessions that affects the way that your body processes the food, and therefore you don't have any appetite to eat. So this video is going to solve all 4 of these problems one by one so that you can nail your appetite. And we're going to start with the first one. Now, it is my firm belief that any problem that you're going to run into comes from, or at least can be solved first, with looking at our foundation. So if we're building a big building like this, and our foundation is that the building is eventually going to tip over or it's going to get crushed, we don't want to get big by luck or by chance. We want to ensure that our foundation is strong so that we can support all of the growth that is going to come from it. And so what I mean by this is that most people don't even know how many calories they're supposed to be eating, which is kind of shocking considering that there are hundreds or maybe thousands of problems that you're going to face in bulking. Bad appetite is one of them, but almost all of them can be immediately solved by just knowing how much food you're actually supposed to eat. And what I mean by this is knowing your maintenance calories. Now, maybe you've seen this term somewhere before, and I'm going to show you exactly how to find yours. So when you inevitably run into a problem, you can be 100% sure that the diet side of things is in check. And so there's a bunch of different ways that we can solve bulking problems. As it relates to the appetite, this is 100% a food issue, so we have to start from the bottom. I'm going to show you exactly how to calculate your maintenance calories so you know exactly how much food you need to eat from day 1. And I can do it in 3 steps. The first step to knowing your maintenance calories is to go to the internet. Go to Google or Bing or whatever search engine you use, and I want you to type in calorie calculator. I'm going to put CC right here. Calorie calculator, just those 2 words, and you're going to go to the first website you see. And the second step is to, And the second step is to enter your stats. So by stats, I mean your age, your gender, height, weight, activity level. These are things that the calorie calculator is going to ask you. And you need to be accurate with these stats because if you give it inaccurate stats, you're going to get an inaccurate amount of calories. So enter your age, your gender, your height, your weight, and your activity level, and it's going to spit out a number. Now that number might be 1,800 or 2,372, but there's going to be a number that comes out of this calculator. And what I want you to do is not only eat that amount of calories for a day, but I want you to eat it every single day for the next week straight. So let's just say this number for this example of this video is going to be 2,500 calories. That's what the calculator gives you. You're going to eat 2,500 calories a day, every day for the next week. Now, if we were to play out this week-long process, what would that look like if you ate, let's just say 2,500 calories a day, every day for the next week? Now, once again, I'm going to take this from the bottom up, assuming that you have not done anything right and that you have the worst appetite in the world. And so we're going to start at day 1. What do we do on the first day when we're eating this amount of calories? Well, what I want you to do is weigh in. So let's just say you weigh in, you step on the scale, you're not wearing any clothes, you didn't drink a bunch of water, and the scale says 130 pounds. Let's just say you're 130 pounds here. I want you to then eat 2,500 calories for every single day and you eat 2,500 calories a day for every day after that up until day 7. Then on day 7, what are you going to do next? You also weigh in. Now, if you entered the right stats for your calorie calculator and you ate that amount of calories every single day from day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, that weight is probably going to stay around the same. Let's just say you're 130.4 pounds. If you gain less than half a pound over this week-long process, I'll say that the maintenance calorie estimate that the calculator gave you, I would say that it's pretty accurate. So let's just say it's 2,500 calories. That's probably pretty close to your maintenance. But let's just say you eat the amount of calories every single day for the next week, and you go up to 131.4 pounds. You gain 1.4 pounds in a week. That's a pretty hefty gain. I would say then that the maintenance calories that the calculator gave you is not accurate to your actual maintenance, but it's actually a little bit too much. So if you wanted, you could probably start bulking off this amount of calories. If you go through this week-long process, but then you lose weight, you go from 130 and you end up at, let's just say, 128.6, then that estimate from the calculator is not accurate nor too much. It's actually too little. Meaning if you wanted to actually bulk up and get big, you'd have to eat more calories than what the calculator gave you. So if it says 2,500 calories and you end up losing weight, maybe you start your bulk at 2,800 calories. Something like that. If you're just starting up or your appetite is absolutely horrible and you need a really big change to your bulk, I don't recommend skipping this step. I know it's a week-long process and you probably want the results right now. Just go through it because it makes sense to have your maintenance calories. I'll draw it out right here. If you have the amount of calories you need to stay alive and you eventually have your maintenance, this keeps you at your current weight. You could estimate your maintenance to be over here and then start bulking. You're not eating this much more calories than your maintenance. You're actually eating that much more calories, right? So you can estimate your maintenance to be way over here. Most skinny guys think that they're eating 3,000, 3,500 calories as their maintenance, but if you calculate what they're actually eating, they're probably not even close to 2,000. So you have to make sure that your maintenance is accurate. And the easiest way to do this is to get on the calculator, enter your stats, read the number, then eat that amount of calories every single day for the next week. If your weight's going down, eat more calories than what the estimate gave you. If you're gaining too much weight, eat a little bit less. If you gain close to within half a pound to a pound, I'd say that that estimate is pretty accurate. I just recommend that you go through this week-long process, even if it is, longer than what you're willing to deal with. If you can't deal with a week-long process of eating food, then I don't think bulking's for you. The next step is we actually have to create a calorie surplus, right? We can't just eat at maintenance for forever and expect to build a lot of muscle. How much food do we need to eat? The amount of food you need to eat is dependent on your goals, but I'm going to assume here that your objective is to build muscle and get stronger and gain more weight, right? So we're going to need some sort of calorie surplus. Now, the thing about bulking up and getting bigger is that you don't need thousands of extra calories over your maintenance in order to build muscle. In fact, you're going to be building the most amount of muscle and getting the least amount of fat gain in just a slight calorie surplus. So when guys eat in these massive bulks, expecting all these extra calories to go straight to muscle growth, your body's always going to gain more fat faster than it'll build muscle. So all these extra calories pretty much go straight to fat gain. Now, the amount of calories that you need over your maintenance, this surplus here that you see, it's not going to be the same for everybody. But generally speaking, 99% of guys will benefit from a calorie surplus of 300 to 700 calories eaten over their maintenance every single day. So what does that look like? If you're eating 2,500 calories a day, that could be 2,800 calories to 3,200 calories a day. I think anywhere within this range is pretty strong. But there's a point I want to make here about your calorie surplus. Just because you're inside this decent range of how many calories you should be eating, it does not mean that more is better. It's really dependent on two things, and that is the body fat that you are starting at and the weight and body fat you want to get to by the end of the bulk. Because if you're starting your bulk at, let's just say, you estimate yourself at 16% body fat, a big calorie surplus like this is not going to be for you. You're going to gain a lot of fat pretty quickly, then you'll just become obese. So we need to make sure that our calorie surplus is made for us, our body, and our goal. Let's just say if you're starting, I'll put a picture up here. This is what I used to look like before I started working out, about a year and some change before I got into the gym seriously. You can see I'm pretty lean here. I have zero muscle mass whatsoever, but I don't have much body fat. And so I'm starting at a pretty lean body fat percentage. Let's call it, let's call it 11%. Let's say I'm 11% in this picture. I can get away with a higher calorie surplus if I want to do my first or second bulk, because in my first or second bulk, my body is going to be the most responsive to a higher calorie surplus, meaning I can go eat more calories for longer and be able to build more muscle at the start of my first bulks because my body is going to be kind of in that newbie gain phase. If you've ever heard of that before, your body is most primed to build the most muscle at the start. And so if I wanted to eat, let's just say 700 calories over my maintenance and then start adding more calories from there, it's going to be a very long time before I hit a body fat percentage that I would deem too high. Let's just say 18%. It's going to take me a lot longer to go from 11 to 18 than it would for someone to go from 16 to 18, right? So we can't have a massive calorie surplus if your starting body fat is already high. I would strongly encourage that you take your shirt off and stand in front of a mirror and ask yourself, can I see my abs? Are my abs visible? Do I have clear separation between the muscles? Can I clearly see which muscles are which? Do I have visible vascularity? Do I have striations in the muscle? Do I have a clear-cut jawline? Is my waist thinner or is it a little bit more blocky? Do I notice that the corners of my waist are a little bit softer? Am I a little bit flabbier, right? These are questions you can ask yourself. And the more signals that point to you having a higher body fat, I think the smaller this calorie surplus should be. So you'd probably be at your best between 300 and 500 calories over your maintenance. So that could look like go from 2,500 to 2,800 or 3,000. I don't want you to look at what I say or what I draw on the board as scripture, as a prescription for what you're supposed to do. You don't have to do anything technically. So if you don't want to eat in a low calorie surplus, if you want to eat in a high calorie surplus, that's fine. I'm just saying if you're starting at a little bit of a higher body fat, it doesn't make sense if your goal is to build muscle without getting fat to then have a super high calorie surplus. You'd actually benefit from the smaller end of the range. So maybe 300 to 500, anywhere in between there. Totally fine. Why do we want to have this extra food in the first place? Why do we want to eat more calories than we're burning off? Great question. Like I said, your body's going to be the most primed for muscle growth when you are eating in this slight calorie surplus. Why is this? Well, you have to understand that eating food, the process of eating food, is not something you do just for enjoyment, just because you like eating food or you like having hamburgers and fries. Your body needs a certain amount of calories to stay alive. And up until you reach your maintenance calories, these calories right here are devoted to your brain, to your organs, to keeping you alive, to keeping you running. And so these calories are used as fuel. I'd like you to look at calories the same way you would as gas to a car. Now, you have your maintenance calories right here. Eventually, you run into a point where you have a certain amount of calories needed to keep you at the same weight. In our example, we talked about 130 pounds, right? We're starting from the beginning here because I want to make sure that our foundation is strong. So you have your maintenance calories right here. And up until this point, the body doesn't care about you looking jacked or you being super big or super strong. It just cares that it has enough fuel for you to survive. And so think of any extra calories more than this maintenance as calories that can be devoted to you gaining muscle. Now the body, like I said, its number one priority is not for you to get jacked. And so sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable eating a little bit more than what's needed to sustain yourself. If I have my water right here, if I drink more of this water than what my body needs to sustain itself and stay hydrated, where does the extra water go? I pee it out, right? And so if you're eating so many more calories than what's needed to sustain yourself and to build muscle, at a certain point, those extra calories are going to waste. And the body's going to use those extra calories as stored energy for later use. A fancier way to say that is body fat. But you already know this stuff. So why do we want to eat in a slight calorie surplus? Why do we not want to have a massive amount of food for no good reason? If you're looking at this 300 to 700 calorie surplus, like I said, it depends on who you are, what your starting body fat is, and what your goal is in terms of size, in terms of weight, and in terms of ending body fat. And I want to add that you don't have to hit your goal weight in your first bulk or your second bulk or whatever bulk you're on right now. It doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 7. If you're 130 pounds watching this, you don't have to hit 200 by the end of this bulk. You can hit it 3 or 4 bulks from now. And so the thing is, the longer that you eat in a calorie surplus, and presuming that you're going to add more calories over time, so you might go from a 300 calorie surplus right here, and you might end up at 1,200 calories over your maintenance. So you might go 2,500 and end your bulk eating 3,700 calories a day. Now, people say be patient or enjoy the journey, and that's good advice, but it's pretty overused and it's not actually super actionable. So I want you to look at it like this. When you're trying to go from where you are right now, I'll draw it up here. If you're 130 pounds and you're trying to hit 220 pounds, you want to be 220 pounds on the scale. If you try to gain 90 pounds in one bulk, I guarantee that you're going to become morbidly obese, or at least get pretty close. And so gaining a ton of weight on your first go around is not the smartest play. I'm not telling you to undershoot your goals. I want you to set unrealistic goals so that you can work to that standard. But also don't measure your success on, did I get from 130 to 220? If I didn't get to 220, I failed. You didn't fail. The weight on the scale is not indicative of the progress you make. So if you feel like you're struggling with your appetite and it's getting so hard to eat this food, but you have to eat this food because you have to hit this weight on the scale, I want you to ask yourself, what is the weight that I'm gaining? What is it consisting of? Am I gaining 90 pounds of muscle? Am I gaining 90 pounds of fat? Am I gaining 90 pounds of water? Ideally, we want the weight that we gain to be muscle. So if you go from 130 to 145 at the end of your bulk, 15 pounds in the course of 8 months to a year is not crazy weight gain. That's not a massive jump. But if you stayed just as lean or got leaner, you look leaner, and you're 15 pounds heavier, that is a massive win. And so you don't have to eat 1 trillion calories in order to get these kind of results. By the way, if you're gaining 15 pounds of muscle, whether it's year 1, year 2, year 3, if you're gaining that much muscle in 1 year, you got better genetics than probably 90% of people. And so most people can't even reach this in 3 to 5 years because they're not consistent, or they just don't have good genetics, or both. So first off, if you feel like the food is becoming unbearably hard to eat, the first filter that I would set in place is how many calories are you eating over your maintenance? And if you notice that you're eating so much more, like beyond 700, you're eating 1,000 or even 2,000 calories over your maintenance, that's fine. But if it starts to feel unrealistic, you're eating so many more calories than what's needed to sustain yourself, it would make sense that that food's pretty hard to eat. I just want you to look at the goal that you're shooting for. Ask yourself why you're eating this amount of food in the first place. Is it because you're trying to hit a certain weight? If so, ask yourself, what kind of weight are we gaining? If all the weight you're putting on is muscle, that's absolutely incredible, and almost nobody can do that. But if that's you, great, keep doing that. For the other 99.999% of you, shooting for a certain weight on the scale doesn't really indicate success. If you look leaner at that heavier weight, I would call that a win. But most times, that's not the case. You're going to look considerably fatter trying to get to a certain weight. So ask yourself what you're actually bulking for. The guys that sign up for the Incredible Bulk, they're gaining 15, 16 pounds in 6 months. And you might think, that's not a huge weight gain, but they're not gaining a lot of body fat. In fact, they're staying pretty close to the exact same body fat as when they started. And if you look at 6 months, and let's just say they gain 15 pounds, fitness is a game that's meant to be played without stopping, right? The goal of fitness is not to get to a certain physique and then stop working out entirely and never work out again. The goal is to get to that physique and keep it or keep growing. Let's play it out over 5 years. If you gain 15 pounds every 6 months for 5 years, what's the math on that? 30 pounds, 150 pounds. You gain 150 pounds of muscle. Now, you're not going to gain 15 pounds every 6 months consistently. It's going to drop as you do more. So you might do 15, then 13, then 11, then 8, then 6, then 3. It might look like that. But even if you add these up, right? 28, 39, 47, 53, 56. If you put 56 pounds of muscle on your frame, you are going to look drastically different over a 5-year time span. But the problem is guys are just so impatient and they want to get this 56 pounds on their first bulk or in their first year or in their second year. It's like you're going to get fat trying to gain that amount of weight that quickly. The body doesn't build muscle that fast when you're natural. And so give it time. How many calories are you eating? Are you eating way too much beyond what's needed? And then if you are, ask yourself what you're trying to gain this weight for and why are you trying to get there so quickly? The first time I got to 200 pounds, I was really excited, but then I realized I was actually kind of chubby. Once I dialed it back, once I got my diet in check, I reduced my calories and I slowly bulked up from there. Now I'm 213 pounds, but I'm way leaner than I was at that 200 pounds a year and a half ago. And so things can change pretty quick if you're just willing to take it slow. And often, taking it slow and doing one step at a time is the fastest way to get there. Okay, now that we got the basics out of the way, I think there's 3 main reasons why you're feeling full. And it starts with poor meal timing and poor food choices. Then over time, you develop a bit of a redundancy to your calorie surplus. So I'll start over here. Let's just say you're eating 4 meals a day. If you were to eat these meals at specific times in the day, which I would hope that you do, let's just say we're going to eat at 8 a.m., 12 p.m., 5 p.m., and 8 p.m. In a perfect world, when these times hit, you eat immediately. And the reason why I have them spaced out like this is because we want to have as much space as we possibly can between each meal so that we can properly digest it and then make room for the next meal. But if you're having a tough time eating and you're always feeling full, chances are that this meal is not properly digested, and then it affects this meal. This meal isn't properly digested, and these two compound affect this meal. And then all 3 of these not properly digested affect the meal at the end, result in you getting bad sleep, you're not recovered, you feel full going to bed, your stomach is sore, and it's pretty hard to get down those calories. There's a bunch of different reasons as to why guys miss meals, but it fundamentally comes down to them getting distracted. And so when the time hits, you aren't eating. The first course of action that I recommend is that you set the times for yourself for when you plan to eat. Now for me, my meals right now at this time of my life are at 6:45 a.m., 10:30 a.m., 1:30 p.m., 4:30 p.m., and 8:15 p.m. So I have my meals at those times. I have 5 meals a day. And as you eat more calories and as you eat more meals, you have to become more and more strict with when you eat them at. And you have to become more diligent with sticking with those times. So let's play it out. Let's just say I eat the first meal and all is good. I eat the second meal and all is good. But I decide to push the third meal back by 2 hours because I'm busy, I decide to keep working, or I get distracted talking to somebody, whatever. This meal is no longer eaten at this time. It's instead eaten right here, which is fine because now I have more time to digest from meals 2 to 3, but now meals 3 to 4 are crammed. And so I don't have as much time here to process the food. What happens next? I'm probably going to push this meal back. And I push it back right here. Now I have more time between meals 3 and 4, but now meals 4 and 5 are even more crammed. What happens here? I push back meal 5. You can see how making a small change like pushing back meal 3 by 2 hours now affects the rest of the meals that you're supposed to eat throughout the day. It seems like such a small thing, delaying a meal by an hour or an hour and a half, but I promise you it compounds on itself, especially if you delay the meals that are eaten earlier in the day. If you're eating 5 meals a day and you delay meal 4 and you push that one back a bit, it's not going to be that hard to eat meals 4 and 5 back to back. But if you delay meal 2, that now affects meal 2, meal 3, meal 4, and meal 5. So the earlier in the day that you push the meal back, the harder it is to get the others in for the rest of the day. Back to our 4-meal example. You can see that they're pretty much scheduled on average 4 hours apart, and there's a reason for this. I'm going to assume that you sleep 8 hours. So you have 24 hours in a day and you sleep 8 hours. That means that you have 16 hours left in your day to do everything that you need to do, work your job, spend time with the family, walk the dog, train, and eat. And so it would make sense that the meals are split evenly amongst the amount of time that you're awake. For most people, that's going to be 16 hours. And so you can see how each meal is spread apart by around 3, 4, or 5 hours, which is great. That's in a perfect world. But if you're not getting the meals in on time, if you decide to delay your breakfast and you delay your breakfast from 8 a.m. to 9:30, now you don't have much time here. And so you could cram the meals back to back. But if you're constantly feeling full, it's probably why that's happening, is because you can't time the meals properly. So this video, I want you to think of this video as we progress further down. I want you to think about the problem that you're facing as an arrow going down here. And I want you to think about everything that I'm going to cover from here on out as filters meant to block this arrow from hitting the bottom right here. And so as we go through this video, you're going to get caught at a filter. Maybe your first filter was that you didn't know how many calories you're supposed to be eating and you were eating way too much food and you got caught at this first filter. Act on that. Maybe the second filter is that your meal timing is poor. And so you hit this second filter. you can act on that. And so we're going to cover many different filters that you can act on until we get to either the base root of the problem and solve that, or it becomes a problem that's unsolvable, and then we take medical intervention, because you should be able to solve your appetite without any prescriptions, without any drugs, without any surgery, without any life-altering procedures. This video is going to cover every possible filter that you can run through in order to fix your appetite, even as somebody who doesn't have much of an appetite at all, whatever that means, because I had that my entire life. It's totally fixable. We just have to do the right stuff. And so we have to check our meal timing. That's the first thing I would look at. I can go deeper into this, but the easiest way, I guess, that you can solve this problem is to get an alarm. Set alarms on your phone. I can prove to you that I do this. So, I mean, that's my alarms earlier in the day, but if I scroll down, it's already, what time is it? It's 3:47 p.m., so all the alarms that have happened before that have already occurred. I have a lot of alarms. But you can see my next meal, 4:20. If I click on that, meal 4, egg whites, orzo, banana. And so I have the meals lined up. Where's my next one? This one? What does that say? Meal 5, oats and protein. So get alarms on your meals. I'm not going to preach something to you that I don't do or that sounds good in theory or because this article said it. I'm only going to show you things and talk about things that I do personally. I do this stuff and it works. Set an alarm for every single meal. And if you're in a public spot like a classroom, a business meeting, a one-on-one call, quarterly meetings, pipeline reviews, sales calls, I don't know. If you're in a public setting where you're on a one-on-one call with somebody, or you're in a place where you don't want a loud alarm buzzing off, you can just set the alarm to silent and vibrate. It's super easy. I'll actually put a screen recording of what the process looks like right up over here. But yeah, alarms for every single meal. Make yourself aware. If you don't want to set alarms, you can write the times on a piece of paper and carry that paper with you. I did that before the alarms, but I think the alarm's a little more convenient because I use my phone every day. So better to have all my stuff consolidated to one place rather than have a bunch of different things that I got to sort to. So set an alarm for your meals. There's a second part of meal timing that I didn't talk about here that doesn't really have to do with when you eat your meals, but more so when you're eating your meals. Let's just say it's this one. What do you do during this meal to get it down fast? That way you have more time in between the next meal to process it. How do we eat without getting distracted? I'll give you the summary version of it. There's an infinite amount of distractions that can take you away from what you're doing in life, but I think the three that are the most important, the ones that pertain most to your eating, are tech, people, and tasks. Now, these are three different things and can kind of manifest in different forms. So you could have calling people, texting, watching videos, social media, games on your phone if you're playing Angry Birds. People, you have conversations, arguments, in person or online. That's pretty much it. Task can be any other job in the world that takes you away, or takes away your hands, takes away your mouth to talk, takes away you from eating. And so there's a bunch of different things that can come while you're eating your meals. I'm going to erase every distraction that you'll run into with tech. The easiest way to get rid of a tech distraction is to set your phone or your laptop to grayscale. What is grayscale? Grayscale is when, hey Siri, turn on grayscale. Black and white. A big reason why tech companies and social media companies profit so much and put so much of their attention on attention span is because the more they can get you to use their device or their app, the more money they're probably going to make from sales, from advertising, etc. And so it would be their number one focus to keep you on that device or on that app for as long as possible. A really easy way to do that is to get flashing colors or vibrant effects, things that catch your eyes that you don't typically see, right? I promise you, if you were to set your phone to black and white like this and use the apps that you do, it would be a heck of a lot less interesting because you don't have the colors coming out. Look at the difference, right? Whole bunch of different colors. And so the easiest way you can get rid of a tech distraction is to set your phone to grayscale. Your phone becomes immediately less interesting, and so do all the videos, so does all the social media. Everything you do here becomes much less attractive. You could also just get it out of the room. Now, maybe that's not possible, and I understand that. That'd be the first thing I do is get it out of the room. Maybe you need it with you to make a call or do whatever. So set it to grayscale. The next thing you can do is to set a timer, but not on your phone. Get an actual kitchen rotary timer. These are like $20 on Amazon. So all you do is just twist it to the time you set for yourself. Let's just say I want this meal to take 22 minutes and 30 seconds, and you let the time wind down. The cool thing about this is if I look away and if I get distracted, I click the timer. Now the timer stops. And now I know every second that this timer is running is devoted to me eating. And the second that I look away, I pause the timer. When you use this for the first time, you'll be quickly reinforced that the time you think you spend eating is a lot longer than it is. Because if you just let this time wind down and all you did during this time was eat, then you'd probably get the meal done in this time. But sometimes the meals take you 2 to 3 times longer because you're not spending all of that time just eating. You're doing other things. And it could be one of these things. You're using tech, you're talking to people, you're doing other tasks instead of just eating. I recommend getting a timer that isn't your phone, because if it's on your phone, you're going to be more likely to use the device. Next, people. Very easy fix. Leave. That is it. You leave the area. You leave the area, people, and you go eat in solitude. And you might be wondering, well, I like to eat with friends. I like to eat with family or coworkers. That's fine. Just know that you'll probably be trading some sort of meal timing as an expense. That'll be the expense you pay, and that's okay. It's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying if you want to maximally eat your meal as fast as possible so you can digest it so you don't feel full and so your appetite improves, it would make sense to eat in solitude. If you can't leave the room, if you can't actively leave, the next course of action would be to deny any conversations or tasks. Just say, hey, I'm just trying to get this food down really quickly so I can get back to work or get back to our conversation. I just really want to take this 15 minutes just to eat, if that's okay. 9 times out of 10, people will say, okay, that's totally fine. Keep eating. In my experience, I don't ask for permission to eat. So I don't say, if that's cool with you, I'd like to keep eating, because you're kind of putting them in power for them to decide. I just say, hey, I'm eating right now. I'll get back to you within the next 10 or 15 minutes. Once the meal is down and you're not using tech, you're not doing tasks, you're not using your phone, you get the meal down on time, then you can go back to doing the original task. Speaking of tasks, we have tasks. The easiest way to solve tasks is actually the same way I solve dealing with people. You leave, so you can't do any other tasks, and you deny any tasks that are brought upon you. Now, sometimes you'll have to do work during your meal. That's totally fine. I'm just saying, if you want to maximally improve your meal timing and not getting distracted, these are the 3 things I would look at first. And so when you eat, just eat. If you're trying to accomplish a goal, and that goal is eat your food, the fastest way to get from where you are to this goal is a straight line, which means we're going to be just eating when it's time to eat. But if your attention is now going to social media, to a conversation with a coworker, to a new task that is brought up, to booking a dinner, to texting a friend, to going back to the movie, you can see here that not only is your attention spread elsewhere, but your attention per new task that you take up gets smaller and smaller and smaller as you do more tasks. And so the fastest way to get a task done is to have complete solitude against anything else that does not contribute to you completing this task. And when you're eating, the only thing that matters for you getting the meal down is you eating. That's how I eat undistracted. In short, that is meal timing. We've solved that. Now I want to solve poor food choices. Before we move on, I'd like to point out that the meal timing matters, what you do during those meals matter, and also what you do in between these meals matter. And so if we were to look at your habits, let's just say we're eating 4 meals a day. Let's say you have the perfect meal timing. When you eat, you don't get distracted, but in between the meals, you're not drinking any water whatsoever. And you instead decide to drink a ton of water while you're eating your meals. I don't think this is the smartest play, and I'll show you why. Even if you have the perfect meal timing right and you have no distractions while you're eating, you can still screw up your meal timing pretty bad by having a ton of water during your meals. Water has 0 calories. No matter how much water you drink, you're not going to be getting any calories out of that. Let's just say you drink 16 cups of water a day. That would equate to 4 liters. And if you're wondering how much water to drink per day, you can just calculate 0.033 to 0.066 liters per kilogram of body weight. So I personally weigh, let's just say 100 kilograms. I would have between 3.3 and 6.6 liters of water per day. Sometimes I have more. I personally drink between 5 to 7 to 9 liters of water per day. We're just going to use 4 liters for an example. If you're drinking 16 cups of water per day and you drink all your water in cups, I think it's really smart to prioritize water intake in between the meals. And so back to the original point, water has 0 calories, which means you can drink 1 billion liters of water and you're not going to get any calories out of it whatsoever. So any fluid that you're drinking that is not containing calories is simply taking space in your stomach, which means a lot of the space that's making you feel full is going to liquid if you're drinking a lot of water during your meals. And so if we assume that you are and you have these 16 cups of water, ideally you'd want to have almost all of your water in between these meals, not during the meals. I think it's okay to have 1 cup. So let's just say we have 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup. That's 4 cups. And then that leaves us with 12 cups for the day. So then in between your meals, you have 4 cups of water. You have 4 cups of water. You have 4 cups of water. So you have 1 cup at a meal, 4 in between. 1 cup at a meal, 4 in between. 1 cup at a meal, 4 in between. 1 cup before bed. And you can also see the neat thing about this is that you're not having a ton of water before bed. We're not having 4 or 5 cups right before we go to bed after meal 4, which means that this 1 cup that we drink, it's less likely that we're going to have to wake up to pee in the middle of the night. Now, you don't have to have 1 and 4. You could have 2 and 3 or none and 5, whatever you want. I'm just giving you this kind of structure because if you're having 4 cups of water during one meal, you're going to have a tougher time eating and it's going to make you feel full. It's going to ruin your appetite and it's also going to ruin your digestion too. So I just suggest limiting the water during the meal and then having most of your water in between the meal. We now know how to get the meals in on time using the alarm, how to eat undistracted. When we eat, we're not doing anything else, how to limit distractions while we're eating, and even how to structure our water intake throughout the day. Now you might be looking at this and say, George, this is really obsessive. Why do I need to do all this stuff? The answer is you don't, right? At the end of the day, I want to make it super clear. I'm not someone who's trying to, change your whole life structure around. But if you're not seeing gains and if you're seeing issues with your appetite, if you're constantly feeling full, some things have to change. If you were to look at fitness and getting jacked like you would a 3-legged bar stool, right? We have a bar stool with 3 legs. Each leg serves their own purpose. Why is this? Because at any point, if any of the legs breaks, or you don't do them, the bar stool topples over. It falls, right? So we need all 3 legs to be standing for this bar stool to work. The metaphor that I'm referencing is that if these legs are standing, you will be getting results. And these 3 legs are eat all your meals, train hard, get to bed on time. These are the 3 things. If you miss any one of these, if you don't do meals, but you train and you get to bed on time, we're not going to be eating enough calories to grow. If you do meals in bed, right, you eat enough food and you sleep, well, then you're not giving your muscles any of the stimulus you would in the gym. So you need to train. And if you were to eat your meals, train hard, but not sleep on time, you barely get any sleep or you don't recover properly, then you're never going to be able to recover in between these hard training sessions. And we know that we have to train. The process of growth is train, recover, keyword, recover, then grow. You can't train, then grow. You have to train, put back what was lost, and then put a little bit more on top. So we have to do all 3 at once for this to work. And right now we're focused on the diet. And so if you're doing things that make it harder for you to eat all your meals, get this action done, then it is less likely that you'll be able to eat all your meals. And therefore this leg will be missing. That's why I'm so huge on making it as easy as possible to get each of these 3 core actions done. Let's talk about food choices because I think that's something else that's highly undervalued and underappreciated. So you might have the perfect meal timing. You might know exactly when to eat your meals. And then when the times hit, you eat at those times. You're consistent. You don't get distracted while you eat and you've managed your water intake. That's great. But if the foods you're eating are not helpful, they're not easy to eat, they don't make it enjoyable for you to stick to, it's pretty hard to stick to a calorie surplus for a long period of time. And so we have to make sure that the foods that we're eating are good quality foods that support our goals, that help us digest. We want these foods to propel us to more gains. So I'll show you some good signs that the foods you're eating are either good or bad for bulking. And there are 6 little boxes that I want to check. Now we want our meals to be easy to chew, fast to swallow, high in calories, small in size, portable, and high in a certain macronutrient, so either high in protein, high in carbs, high in fat. Of course, we want it to be easy to chew because if you're having to use so much energy and so much force just to crunch the food, and you have to do that for every foods that you eat 4 or 5 times a day, It's not ideal, and it makes it less likely that you're going to get those meals down because it is so hard to process that food. Of course, you want it to be fast to swallow, because if you're working a job where you have to talk a lot, if you're in sales, I was in sales while I was trying to bulk up. I had a sales job before. And so before I found the foods that allowed me to do this, it was really tough for me to eat enough calories and then still be able to go out and talk to people at work. And so we have to make sure that these foods are fast to swallow. Now, you could group these two together in the same thing, but I think they're a little bit separate, because this is while you're chewing the food and this is getting the food down. So it's a little bit different. Of course, we want it to be high in calories because we're bulking up. So if we're in this is our maintenance calories, and we're in our calorie surplus right over here, we want to make it as easy as possible to hit this calorie surplus every single day. And so if you're having low calorie foods, you're going to have to eat a lot of them, which brings me to my next point. We want it to be small in size. So if you're having to eat chicken thighs and you have a bowl like this of chicken thighs, you might have the same amount of calories in a bowl like this of chicken breasts. What do you think is easier to eat? This small bowl of, let's just say, 200 grams of chicken thighs, or this big bowl of 370 grams of chicken breasts, right? You're having to eat a lot more quantity of food here, which is not what we want, because it makes it harder. It takes us longer to eat this food rather than this one. So there's going to be specific foods that are more beneficial in this case, chicken thighs being one of them. We want the food to be small in size and high in calories. If you can get a food that is both high in calorie and small in total size, that is what we call a calorie dense food. You might have seen this term before, calorie dense. And this just means that for every gram or for every quantity of that food, there are a lot of calories. And the more calories we have for the smaller amount of food, the more calorie dense it is. Ideally, we want foods that are calorie dense. Next, we want the food to be portable. If you cannot bring the food anywhere and you can only eat it, the only place that you can eat that food is at your dinner table with a glass plate and some metal forks, it's not ideal. We want to have things that we can bring with us if we're traveling for work, if we're eating at work, if we have stuff on the go, right? If you're driving places, if you're flying all the time, we have to make sure that for the working man, whatever your job might be, that you can bring that food with you. And so I'm going to cover some foods that you can bring on the go. Finally, we want it to be high in a certain macronutrient. The reason why I prioritize this so much is that sometimes you'll need meals that are specifically high in protein. When you're having your pre and post workout meal, you want to have a meal that is high in carbs. And when you're having your pre and post workout meal, you want to have a meal ideally that's low in fat. But if you're hiking, if you're going kayaking, or if you have a day full of meetings, it would make sense that a lot of your meals are more high fat. So it'd be really smart to have foods that are high and low in certain macronutrients. That way we can differ the macros per meal depending on our situation. I think with these 6 boxes that we check, if we can confidently say that the meal is easy to chew, fast to swallow, high in calories, small in size, portable, and high and low in a certain macronutrient, I'd call that a pretty good bulking food. So here are 36 bulking foods that are super easy to eat. They're easy to cook. They're fast to chew, easy to swallow. Everything that we talked about, everything that we're looking for in a food, they're high calorie compared to their serving size. And so every single food here is color coded by its most dominant macronutrient. So red is going to be foods that are highest in protein, green is going to be highest in carbs, orange is going to be highest in fat. And so if you're experiencing discomfort with the foods you're eating, maybe it's getting overwhelming the amount of food you have to eat, or the foods in your diet just plain suck, consider switching it out for one of these foods on the board. Now, all of these foods I purposely included because, one, they're foods that I eat on my bulks, and I didn't just include super healthy foods, because you can see I have cereal, I have chocolate milk in here, but I also didn't include fast food or ice cream or cookies or junk like that. And so I try to keep the majority of it healthy. I want to have 80% of my foods come from good, clean food sources, and the other 20% I'm a little bit more lenient with. But as long as we're hitting that calorie goal, I think we're in a good spot. If you're going to switch any foods out, switch a high protein food for a high protein food, high carb for high carb, and high fat for high fat. So I'll step out of the way, and when you feel like you need to switch one of the foods in your diet for something else, this board will be there. So let's move on. Now from that list, you can pretty much put all of that into like a sandwich, a shake, into a parfait with granola, with yogurt, with fruit. There's a whole bunch of combinations you can make. I'll let you use your best judgment for that. But I think there's still a few more questions that we can ask ourselves when choosing the proper foods. So the first question you can ask yourself is this meal that I'm going to eat, is it going to contribute 20 to 30% of my total calories for the day? The reason I ask this is because when you're trying to bulk up, ideally I recommend eating between 3 and 6 meals a day. If you're going below 3, if you're eating 1 to 2 meals a day, those meals are going to be massive. And so it's going to be very hard to process that amount of food and shock your digestive system. If you're eating 7, 8, 9 meals a day, then you're going to be eating every like 30 minutes. And so it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't give your body much time to digest the food in between. I personally eat 5 meals a day. And when my calories get really low on a cut, then I move to 4. And so I think the happy medium here is having meals that are 20, 25, 30% of the calories that you're supposed to eat for the day. If you're eating, let's just say 3,000 calories, is the meal you're eating between 600 to 1,000 calories-ish? Ask yourself. You can easily make that calculation for the amount of calories you need to eat, but this just gives you a ballpark on how big each of your meals should be. And ideally, you want to have some of your, I guess, heavier meals that are bigger in size. I don't personally have those heavy meals early in the morning because I prefer to work as soon as humanly possible, meaning I don't want to have a massive amount of food that I have to get through before I can start working. I want to make sure that this meal is going to be on a smaller side, around 20% of my calories for the day. And as I get closer to my workouts, I prefer to have a little bit more food in my stomach when I lift. And so I might opt for a meal that's 20 to 25% of my calories and have tons of carbs, tons of simple carbs, a little bit of sugar in there, and foods that I enjoy and that are easy for me to eat so that I can digest them quickly and have good lifts. So ask yourself, is this meal that I'm going to eat between 20 and 30% of the calories for the day? The next question. Can I cook, chew, and swallow this meal in under 30 minutes? The reason why I have 30 minutes here is because if you're eating your 4 meals a day, let's just say, it's not the fact that you just have to have the meal prepared in advance and then drink your water, have your hydration in check, all that other stuff, and let alone do your work, like live your life in between these meals. You also have to eat the meal on time, or ideally you want to eat undistracted, and then you have all this extra time before your next meal. And so what happens is the longer it takes for you to eat this meal, the more it's going to push into the next one. And so if it takes you a really long time to cook, chew, and swallow this meal, it's going to push into the next one, and so on. And now you can see that our meals here are crammed. So I now have to push this meal back, which means I'm going to be getting to bed later. Right? So you can see a massive domino effect from just delaying or taking longer than what you need to eat that first meal. This is why I'm a really big advocate. I didn't talk about it this video, but I've already made a video on how to meal prep for a bulk. I personally cook for around 2 to 3 hours a week, and I'm able to meal prep 14 meals within that time. And so when I have my meal prep, let's just say meals 2 and 3 are in a meal prep container, I don't have any cooking time whatsoever, which means I can just eat this meal right away. And if those meals are easy to chew, they're easy to swallow, they include the foods from the list that we were talking about earlier, it's going to take me a heck of a lot less time to eat that meal, and therefore gives me more time in between to digest, right? So you want to come prepared in advance. Can you cook, chew, and swallow the meal in under 30 minutes? If not, include more convenient foods, some from the list that I just covered. Make sure that those foods are easy for you to chew, that they don't take a lot of time for you to swallow, and that you can cook in advance. If you want to know how to meal prep for a bulk, I will link my video in the description. The third question you can ask yourself to better judge how helpful the foods are in your diet is, if there was an emergency, could I bring the food with me? If I had to immediately leave the house, if I had to immediately leave my work, if there was something where I had to immediately get on the road, can I bring this meal with me? If no, probably not an ideal meal to have, because there's going to be situations in life where you cannot sit and eat every single time. So sometimes there's going to be things that get in the way. You're going to have to get on the move. You're going to have to take a flight. You're going to have to take a car ride. Maybe someone's in the hospital, whatever. And I understand that, life happens, right? And we can't just put our meals and prioritize building muscle over everything else in life. You have your business, you have your family, you have a full-time job potentially. Maybe you're a student in school watching this. I get it. Life happens, but we still want to be able to prioritize the food that we eat. And so if something happens, can I bring the meal with me? This is a quick check to see if your meal is portable. Some meals that are portable, shakes, sandwiches, anything that can be brought in a bag, a Ziploc, a parfait, hiking foods. I call them hiking foods because they're primarily brought on outdoorsy trips like kayaking, hikes, mountain biking, that kind of stuff. So you have I'll actually give some real examples. You have granola, you have pretty much any kind of nut, peanuts, walnuts, almonds, pistachios, cashews, pecans. You can bring protein bars, you can bring trail mix, you can bring raisins, cranberries, shakes. You can pretty much blend any frozen fruit, protein powders, milk, water, avocado oils, oats, peanut butter. There's so many things that you can put in a shake. And so I say the names of these foods. I say frozen fruit, milk, whatever, avocado oil, peanut butter. And I say the names of these foods, but that doesn't mean you put peanut butter in a shake or you put frozen fruit in a shake. A huge part of this is how much of each food goes into each meal. So people can say, oh yeah, chicken thighs and rice are great bulking meals. And that's true, but if you're not eating enough chicken thighs and rice, you're not going to get enough calories. So the key is to find your calorie goal, which is why we talked about our maintenance and starting our calorie surplus from the beginning, so we have a strong foundation, and then eating the right foods in enough quantities to make sure that we're getting in enough calories. So if there is an emergency, can I bring the food with me? Okay, now we're finally moving on to number 3, having a redundant calorie surplus. What I mean by this is when you're in a calorie surplus, so we have the amount of calories you need to stay alive, you eventually have your maintenance, then any calories eaten beyond that maintenance point would be considered a calorie surplus. What happens is, as you bulk up more and you bulk up for longer, that calorie surplus is going to increase over time. You're not just going to eat in this slight surplus and stay there forever. You're going to slowly ramp up the food. You're going to reach a point where eventually the amount of food you're eating is no longer convenient to your life. You notice that you're not building as much muscle and you're actually starting to get fatter quicker. This point is going to be different for everybody. An easy way to tell how far this point is away from your maintenance, essentially, how long will it take before I get to a point where I'm getting too fat? It depends on a few things, but the easiest point to judge is your starting body fat levels. If you're starting at a higher body fat, like I mentioned, you are going to reach this point much faster. If you're starting at a lower body fat percentage, you're starting leaner, it is going to take you slower and slower and slower, a longer time to reach that point. And so we want to make sure that we can stay in this calorie surplus for as long as humanly possible, because we're going to be building the most amount of muscle when we're eating in this slight calorie surplus. It's only when we get to a point where we're eating too many calories than what's needed and we start to gain more fat faster than we're gaining muscle. Now, an easy way to look at it would be, well, that's simple. Just don't eat a ton of calories. And that's true, but you're also going to not be able to maximize the amount of muscle you can build if you're constantly staying in a small surplus. Sometimes you have to push it hard. The answer we're looking for is not a yes or no question. It is not a binary problem to be solved. It is a constant continuum to be managed, which means we have to constantly be aware of how hard we're pushing this calorie surplus so that we know when to back off and when to come back down if we're getting too fat. If you're constantly staying in this calorie surplus, you're going to be pushing more and more and more into that fat territory. When I started at 122 pounds and shredded, no muscle whatsoever, it took me a really long time to get to a point where I got too fat, but eventually I got too fat and I had to back down. A really big symptom that comes from a redundant calorie surplus is a loss or a reduction in appetite. Meaning your body is like, okay, I'm done. We've been eating in this calorie surplus for so long. I no longer want to process this food. That's what the body says. I'm done. And so the body will start to fight back a little bit. It'll be harder and harder for you to get that food down. At some points, you will still have to push through and eat more food, but it gets to a point where it's just too inconvenient and you have to back down. And this could be too inconvenient in the sense that it takes too much of your time. It could be too inconvenient that it costs too much money to eat this amount of food. It could be too inconvenient that we're just getting fat and we have to back down on the calories or else we're going to become morbidly obese. And so this one's pretty easy to explain. When you get to a point, this is how you tell when to back down. When you get to a point when you're getting fatter than you'd like to, come back down. That's it. And the easiest way to come back down is just to drop calories, or if you like the amount of calories that you're eating, you can do a slight drop and do cardio. I just recommend opting for this one over here, dropping calories, because it's pretty easy to eat less food. It puts a lot more stress on the body to be doing cardio more regularly and more intensely. And so if you just want to drop the calories, that's perfectly fine with me. All three of these, poor meal timing, poor food choices, and a redundant calorie surplus give one big, giant, hairy, telltale sign that your bulk is not going the way it should. And it's causing you to feel full all the time and have a really crappy appetite. And that is the quality of your digestion. How able are you to process these foods that you're eating? Now, one thing that the human body is really good at is making you very aware that your digestion sucks. And I'm going to break down all the signs that your body will give you when you're experiencing bad digestion. And I'll break them up into two different categories. Things or symptoms that'll happen suddenly, and things or symptoms that'll happen over time. They're a bit more delayed. So let's start over here. You might get a bloated gut, or you might get that sharp pain in your stomach when you try to contract your stomach and your abs. You feel like that sharp stabbing pain. That could be part of the bloat that you experience, or your gut seems extremely distended, more distended than usual. If you're having a watery face, if you're holding more water in your face or your midsection, obviously a sore stomach. You're going to have warmer farts, and I want to note that these farts will also smell worse. They're going to be stinkier, kind of eggy, right? We talk about bulking pretty much on this channel, but I want you to be aware that there are still some health complications that can arise from bulking. This could also lead next to a loose stool or diarrhea, lethargy, just general lethargy or sluggishness throughout the day, eventually weakness in the gym, meaning you get weaker on your exercises, you're not as strong as you normally would be, and that sharp stomach pain, that sore stomach starts to come back, especially when you're working out and doing heavy compound lifts or leg exercises, especially leg day. If you have bad digestion and it is leg day and you're noticing like, oh, my farts stink, I'm noticing a lot of these symptoms starting to arise, I'd advise that you train legs the next day or train legs when your digestion gets better. Don't try to force a good leg day out of crappy digestion because you might end up actually crapping yourself. It's a very real possibility. And so I want you to be aware of that. Finally, it also takes you longer to fall asleep, mainly because you feel sore in the stomach or your body's trying to fight and get that food down to digest it. In doing so, it is not relaxing. And so you're going to experience some level of restlessness. As for the symptoms you'll experience when it's more delayed, stuff that happens over time, you'll experience all of these things plus an increase, a temporary increase in weight. And this will mainly come from water retention or food that hasn't been fully digested and pooped out yet, so your body's holding on. It doesn't mean you gained immediately 5 pounds of fat if your weight jumps up by 5 pounds. It can just be an increase in water weight or actual food sitting in your body still. And so if you keep pushing food, even when your digestion sucks, like with the leg day, if your digestion is absolutely horrible that day, don't try to force down 3 or 4 more meals. If your digestion sucks after meal 1, take a breather, examine your meal. Did I eat this meal on time? Did this meal contain the right foods? If so, I'm not going to try to push calories a whole bunch today. And if you're experiencing poor digestion day after day after day, probably a decent sign to stop bulking. Another thing you might experience is progressive puffiness. What I mean by puffiness is that your face and your midsection, like the immediate signal, this will typically come back down after your body digests the food, after you get some rest. This is temporary. This is progressive, meaning it keeps getting worse. Or I guess in this case, it keeps going down. It keeps getting worse. Third, you will experience not a small, but a drastic gain in waist size, meaning your waist is going to shoot up like 1/2 inch to 1 inch in what seems like the course of a week, which is absurd. We don't want the waist to climb up. If we're looking at a jacked guy, the objective is to come down with broad shoulders, big arms, big chest, and come down to a small waist. If this waist is not small and instead becomes super chunky like this, the proportion's off. It looks weird. And so we don't want a big waist. Having a big waist is also almost always a direct reflection of high fat gain. And so if your waist is climbing up, it's not a good thing. Fourth, that kind of leads me into my next point, is fat gain. If your body is not properly using the foods that you're putting into it, it is going to devote more of those calories than normal to stored energy for later use, which we know otherwise as body fat. And so your fat gain is going to increase pretty dramatically if you constantly have days where your digestion sucks and you just keep forcing calories. I'd also like to know that the worse your digestion gets over time, the more and the more intensely you will feel of each of these things. Now, there's probably more signals than this. These are the ones that I've experienced personally and that I experience on a recurring basis when my digestion is not good. So we've covered what causes bad digestion. For the most part, it's going to be poor meal timing, poor sleep quality, poor food choices, and a redundant calorie surplus. All of these coupled together will almost guarantee poor digestion. What are the remedies for this? If we're experiencing these things, how do we solve each of these problems? Maybe you're dealing with a bloated gut on a daily basis. Having these problems will make you look less lean and more fat, even if you're at the same body weight. And so if you're experiencing these things, it's not an immediate sign to stop the bulk. It could just be that your gut is bloated because your digestion sucks. So if we fix our digestion using the remedies we'll talk about next, these problems will go away and therefore you'll look leaner and not as fat. How do we get rid of this stuff? Now, there are three main ways that I go about this. The first way I improve my digestion is to do cardio before my meal or do a light walk after. So these are two different processes. And what I mean by having pre-meal cardio would be getting up and essentially moving zone 2 to 3 cardio. And what I mean by zone 2 to 3 cardio would be roughly 65 to 85% of your max heart rate. So if your max heart rate is, let's just say 200 beats a minute, this would be between 130 and 170. An even easier way to tell if you're doing zone 2 to 3 cardio is if it's getting hard to talk or sing, if you're trying to sing out loud, and if you're starting to break into that zone 3 territory, then you're having to rely off breathing out of your mouth rather than your nose. It's going to be a pretty telltale sign that the cardio you're doing is a little bit more intense. Now, the reason why I prefer doing zone 2 to 3 cardio rather than zone 1 is because when you're in that zone 2 to 3, your body is going to spike up ghrelin. And what ghrelin is the hunger hormone. So if we can spike that, I guess artificially through movement, it would be smart, therefore, to go on a light jog. Maybe you do a seated bike. You could do the incline treadmill at, a moderate pace. Anything where it's getting hard to talk, hard to sing, and you're starting to rely off breathing out of your mouth rather than breathing out of your nose. And so if you can knock down these three things, I typically do this for between 15 and 20 minutes. And if I want to burn a few more calories, I'll do a bit of a ramp up period, which means I will be increasing the intensity temporarily. So for maybe, let's just say 3 to 5 minutes, I'll go a lot harder. Maybe I'll go 85 to 90% of my maximum capacity. And then I'd come back down to 65 to 70%, let's just say, for the other 15 to 20 minutes. And so I prefer to do this in the morning, personally, before your first meal. I think that's where it's most effective. There's definitely some truth that fasted cardio burns more fat than just normal cardio. But the amount of fat that you burn, it's not like a drastic amount to the point where this makes a massive difference. I think it's smart just to consider overall movement that is slightly intense. So let's just say 65 to 85% of your maximum ability in terms of cardio output. And by the time this is done, you are going to be a lot hungrier for your first meal. And if you're eating that first meal on time, you're not getting distracted during that meal, it's easy for you to cook and it's fast for you to eat, and you're efficient with your first meal, it then makes every other meal after that really easy to eat. And so I think this is a really good play, especially when you're bulking up and you notice that you're kind of feeling full for your first meal, for your breakfast. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have after the meal. Now, this is something that I've been doing for quite some time before I even knew it was a real thing. It's going on a small walk. And basically, the walk that I'm taking is not intense. It's not going to be zone 2 or 3. I'm not putting in 65 to 85% of my maximum ability. It is the lightest walk you could possibly think of. Walking at a slow pace for 2 hours. No, I'm just kidding. It's 5 to 10 minutes. I don't personally do this on a treadmill. I prefer to do it outside because I like to get fresh air. I like being outside. I like being in the sun. And I live in Canada, so in the winter, it's a little bit tougher. Sometimes I will opt for the treadmill, or I'll just rough it out and put a jacket on and go out in the cold. But I try to get outside, get some fresh air in. It's always nice. And this 5 to 10 minute walk, there's some science that says that it moves glucose throughout the body better towards your muscles. It seems like the impact of how much glucose is moved throughout the body is kind of overrated. I just do it because it feels good. And that's my science behind it. It feels really nice just to walk out 5 to 10 minutes, no stress. I don't bring a phone. So no phone, no texting, no answering comments, no text, no video, nothing. Just me walking outside for 5 to 10 minutes. And I find that this makes me feel a lot better. It makes me digest the food much quicker. So this is more to stimulate the appetite. This is more to speed up the digestion process. So just like recovery in the sense of training, we can't get training and then growth immediately. We must recover. So it makes sense to make this transition from training into recovery as fast as possible. For me, if we were to look at this from the dieting perspective, this is eating into digestion. And so we want to speed up this process and make it as efficient as we possibly can. For me, this is an awesome way to go about it. This is the first way I improve my digestion. The second way is to wipe my face with a cold and damp cloth, meaning the cloth is cold and wet. And so this is not necessarily something that stimulates the appetite or directly influences digestion. It's more of a fail-safe when you are feeling nauseous, when you're not feeling that good. And so sometimes when you're eating your meal on a bulk, you could be eating the meal too fast. You could be eating too much food that you can't handle it. You could be eating the wrong foods that your body can't digest properly. You could be backed up from the earlier meals that weren't properly digested. And then this next meal is now kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back sort of idea. In any case, you might feel nauseous after your meal. I found that the easiest way to offset this, that doesn't include medication, is to go outside, which we kind of cover in the walking thing over here, but also to get a cold and damp cloth, meaning you get, this is what I use to wipe the whiteboard, so it's really disgusting, but you get a clean microfiber cloth like this, and you wet it with cold water and wipe your face. Now, this actually has some scientific function. This isn't like some backyard wrestling thing that I just made up. So we have two main types of states that our nervous system sits in. And that is the sympathetic nervous system, which is the SNS, and we have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the PNS. What happens is with these two states, the sympathetic nervous system can be best described as the fight or flight. So when your body is in like a state of agitation, right? Parasympathetic would be rest and digest, so more of the relaxation. When you're eating, when you're chewing, processing, and swallowing the food, your body is temporarily in a state of fight or flight. But as soon as that food starts to get digested, I think it's when it hits the stomach, then you enter the rest and digest, the parasympathetic, almost the laid back phase. And so if you're to look at this like a car, for example, a car in the, sympathetic situation would be ripping on the highway, driving super fast, right? Vroom. The parasympathetic car would be sitting parked in a garage. And so the objective is to get to this parasympathetic stage as fast as we can and to not stay in this sympathetic stage. But when you're primarily more sympathetic when you're eating, it makes it harder for you to digest because your body's not in a position to accept the food, calm down, and then process that food to use it as fuel. So the body first has to calm down enough to where it can digest the food properly. If you're in a room, that is, if you're eating in a sauna or if you're eating in a very hot room where you're having a lot of outside temperature affecting your body, meaning you're getting really warm where you are, if you're eating in a super hot climate, if you're eating when you're stressed out, if you're stressed from work, if you're stressed because you're trying to move on the go, if you're stressed if someone's trying to have an argument with you while you're eating, this can affect digestion. If you're multitasking too, if you're doing work, if you're typing on a computer or you're trying to do labor work while you're eating, these are things that can keep you in that sympathetic state for longer, which is not what we want. And so that can potentially cause you to feel nauseous, but even if you don't feel nauseous, it's not ideal to stay in this state. So what we want to do, like the training to recovery, we're trying to speed up that process, getting from eating the food to being parasympathetic as fast as we can. An easy way to do this, kind of a pattern break. So think of you're eating your meal and you're in a sympathetic state, and then all of a sudden, boom, now we are in the parasympathetic state. This break right here is a cold and damp cloth. All you have to do is just wet the cloth. This one's disgusting, but wet the cloth, pat it on your face, leave it on your neck. It immediately cools down the body temperature and just gives you a nice break to rest, relax. And it doesn't directly influence digestion, but it does allow you to get to that parasympathetic state much, much, much faster, which allows you to then have good digestion. So for me, this is an indirect way to not only combat nauseating feelings, but also to speed up the digestion process. And I think that's something that most people don't talk about because frankly, most people that are trying to get big don't have to force feed themselves because they don't really try that hard on their bulks. there's going to be some times where you have to force feed yourself and you're going to have to deal with it. This is one of the best ways that I've found to deal with that. Number 3 is to take a nap. And so these first two can pretty much be done anywhere at any time. So if you're at work, if you're just out and about, you're not at home, you're not in your bed, taking a nap is not always a rational possibility. You might be at your job and you're feeling nauseous, then you can easily bring a cloth with you, wet it in the sink, and then dab it on your face. You could probably spare 5 to 10 minutes to go on a walk, even if it's not outside, and you can always do cardio in the morning first thing before your first meal. That's always a possibility. A nap might not always be available to you, but if it is, if you're at home and this is something that you want to try, I would highly recommend. When you're taking a nap, there's actually a few things that happens here. So we talked about the sympathetic nervous system, the SNS, and the parasympathetic nervous system, the PNS. Again, fight or flight and rest and digest. If we're looking at the rest and digest side of things, remember what I said at the beginning of the video, that I like to look at things from the hyperbolic extreme, which means I look at things from a spectrum of the extreme of not doing it and the extreme of doing it 100%. If we're looking at the parasympathetic nervous system, which improves digestion and actually causes you to process the food well, the objective should be to get to 100% of this PNS and 0% of this SNS. If you're watching this video and you do these things after you eat your meals to digest it better, and you go from here to here, I would call that a massive improvement. And the best way to improve digestion is to get to a state of complete relaxation. And so if we look at 100% of complete relaxation, I would consider that sleeping. I think that's the state where you're the most relaxed. And so you might not be able to sleep 9 hours after your meal, but maybe you can spare a 15 to 20 minute nap. Totally possible, right? Especially if you're at home. As for the time that you take your nap at, it's dependent on your schedule. I personally don't go closer than 6 hours apart from the time I nap to the time I actually get to bed. So let's just say I get to bed at 10 p.m. at night. I wouldn't nap past 4, personally. The reasoning for this is it kind of reduces the pressure of sleeping. Your body's a little bit more relaxed now after the nap. And so when you get to bed later that night, it's like, no, I don't really feel like getting to bed right now. And so you might stay up a little bit longer than you want to. If you can get this nap in after, let's just say you're eating 5 meals a day, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Maybe you take the nap after meal 2 and you take a 15 to 20 minute nap right after you eat. Then you just get right back to work and you get right back to eating, and your digestion is drastically improved. The reason why I put left and slight incline is because your stomach naturally leans to the left side, which means it'll dump the food into the small intestine. I think that's the first one. So it goes from stomach to small intestine. That's where the food goes. And it'll dump it into the small intestine faster if you're leaning on the left side. If you're sleeping flat on your back, the food kind of just sits in your stomach. And if you're sleeping on the right side, then you put your stomach in a position where it's not naturally dumping the food into the small intestine and therefore slowing down digestion. So if we're sleeping on our left side and you're sleeping towards your left shoulder, you're naturally going to speed up the digestion process. And the reason why I put slight incline is because of gravity, right? If we have our food right here, laying in bed completely flat means that the food will just kind of sit here, right? But if we're leaning on the left side and we're also on a slight incline, just the slightest incline, this could mean propping up a blanket on top of your pillow to elevate your head, that kind of thing. So let's just say you elevate yourself, then the food will naturally work its way down through gravity, and leaning on the left side, it speeds up the process of digestion. And so, like I said, the nap is not something that you can do at work, obviously. Maybe you can, but if you're at home, maybe it's a weekend for you, or maybe you just work from home if you're a business owner who works online, totally a possibility. And so these are not like take this medication or buy this product. These are things that you can do at home with things you already have. I'm really big on those kind of things because I don't think that you don't need to buy a product for everything that you do. Some things definitely require product solutions, but for the most part, your body can regulate itself. It can improve its own digestion if you just put it in the right position. And that can be from doing cardio to stimulate the appetite before your meal. That can be from doing a walk after your meal, even if it's just 5 to 10 minutes of super light, easy walking outside. I do 15 to 25 minutes here of a little bit more intense cardio, wiping my face with a cold and damp cloth if I'm feeling a little bit more nauseous than I'd like to. And just to speed up the digestion process works great, especially as I get deeper into the bulk. This is absolutely useful. And if I'm already at home and I've already done these things, but I'm still noticing a little bit of discomfort, then I can just go to bed, take a nap, lay on the left side with a slight incline, elevating my head for 15 to 20 minutes, and I'm right back in the game. So this is how I improve my digestion. Now, looking at this nap right here made me think of our old problems that we were facing. We have too much food in totality that makes us feel full constantly. We have too much food to eat at once. We don't have enough time to eat. And finally, we don't have enough energy to eat. And so I think we've pretty much solved feeling full, how to manage eating too much at once, how to manage our time for our meals, and as a bonus, how to improve our digestion. I think this brings us to the last section of our video, which is how to improve our energy so that we can continue to eat. So let's talk about that. Now, you might be thinking that this section is going to be directed towards your diet, but that's not necessarily true. I'm going to focus on your sleep and recovery and how we can improve that to then improve your appetite. Because most people think that training, nutrition, and recovery are three separate entities. They are often intertwined. And not doing one properly or not doing it at all can drastically affect the quality of the other two. So let's improve our energy throughout the day so that we have more of it to devote to eating. And the two biggest reasons why you have no energy to eat actually have to do with your sleep. The first one is that you stay up too late to eat. So if we're eating our 5 meals a day, at some point, either you're pushing one of these meals too far back that it causes this one to be delayed, this last one, or you're just eating so late in the day, you're eating an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours later than you normally would, and you're not going to go to bed until this meal is complete. And so the further that this meal is delayed, the longer it takes you to get to bed, which causes you to get to bed late. And if you're getting up at the same time, that means you're going to be losing sleep. The second is that you cannot fall asleep. So maybe you have the correct meal timing, you have your 5 meals a day, and you get all of them in on time. But when you get to bed, you can't fall asleep quickly and you just lay in bed pretty much wide awake. And so both of these result in you getting to bed later than you need to and having days of poor sleep. Multiple days of poor sleep compounded over each other again and again and again causes high cortisol, lower testosterone, unnecessary fat gain, and eventually muscle loss. Things we don't want. So the smartest course of action, the easiest thing that we can do is to improve our quality of sleep by getting to bed earlier and falling asleep fast. Now, we've already covered how to manage your meal timing, but I'm going to configure that into an actual bedtime routine that benefits your diet and will have that same routine allow you to fall asleep quickly, meaning when you hit the bed, you're falling asleep within 10 minutes. And we've covered meal timing in a few different ways. We've covered meal timing in the sense of getting the meals in at the times we've set for ourselves. So this could be 7 a.m., 10 a.m., 1 p.m., 5 p.m., and 8 p.m. That could be our meal timings, and getting the meals in at those times every single day and not delaying it. We're not eating our 10 p.m. meal at 11:30. We're not eating our 5 p.m. meal at 7. So we're going to eat the meals on time. Once we eat the meals, we don't get distracted, meaning that we are only eating. So the fastest way to achieving a goal from point A to B is going to be a straight line. If our goal is to eat, I'm not going to be watching a movie. I'm not going to be playing games on my phone. I'm not going to try to have an argument with somebody. I'm not going to try to take on a different task. I'm not going to try to walk the dog. I'm not going to try to take a shower. There are a whole bunch of things that I can do to multitask, but the question is multitasking allowing me to get the meal done faster than if I were to just eat the meal and do nothing else? And that includes use my phone, talk to people, go do other tasks, etc. And so we want to stay undistracted. Now, I've covered how I personally handle that. We stay undistracted for every meal. We've also covered the contents of each meal, meaning I'm having a breakfast that promotes me being able to work harder. It doesn't cause me to feel sluggish or tired. I'm able to get this meal in on time, undistracted, and the foods that are inside this meal that are low in artificial sugar, that aren't high in saturated fat, that's high in protein, it allows me to work hard to be able to digest that meal so that I'm able to process that food and then have enough room in my stomach to get in the next meal. And this meal is one that I'm able to get in quickly. I don't have to spend a lot of time cooking or prepping it. It's portable. I'm able to bring it if I need to leave the house. And so me being able to digest that food, I can also take a digestive enzyme earlier in the day. If I were to take a supplement, a digestive supplement, let's just say I draw a little pill here, and I have a digestive supplement for my second meal, this digestive supplement now improves my ability to process the food for not only this meal, but every meal after that. And so if you're going to take your digestive supplement, I recommend taking it around meal 2 or 3 or just earlier in the day. Ideally, before you're halfway done your food for the day, you can take a digestive supplement, and that allows you to process the food that much better. Not necessary, but it definitely makes a difference if you're starting to eat more and more food. Then I move to the next meal. Easy, convenient foods that don't take long to cook. They're portable. But then I personally work out between meals 4 and 5. And so it would make sense that my pre-workout meal contains the foods that allow me to train at my best. That would be a lot of simple carbs. Maybe I have some sweets in there. I have some complex carbs for long-lasting energy. I have high protein. I'm not having a ton of fat because fat takes a really long time to digest. And so I eat this meal, whatever, 45 to 90 minutes before I go train. Then I go train, and then I come back, and then I have more simple carbs. I have some complex carbs to give me better quality carbohydrates, right? Because I'm not going to get my post-workout carbs from Rice Krispies, right? I'm not going to get my post-workout carbs from that. And so I want to make sure that the carbs that I'm eating promote the recovery. If I'm going to be training, I want to ensure that when I go recover, I'm able to get from a state of training to complete recovery as fast as possible. And so the easiest way to do that is to get those carbs and that protein in. But there's an even better way to recover. And that comes after the meal. Because we have to eat these meals and get these meals in on time and not get distracted while doing every other thing in our lives. Meaning that we work. Maybe you operate a business. That's a 24-hour-a-day job. Or you just work long hours. You have your job here. You have work here. Maybe you even work like me before the gym and after. And maybe a little bit after that. Maybe you want to go outside, take a walk, or spend some time with some family or friends. And so you essentially, I don't recommend doing anything before this meal. I personally recommend eating this meal as fast as possible so we have more time for our other meals. But you have your entire life outside of lifting weights and eating the food in between these meals. After this is all done, now it is time to get to bed. And so getting to bed, I want you to change the way you look at it, because people say, I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to do this last bit of work, then I'll go to bed. It's not then I'll go to bed. It's I will be in bed by this time. Let's call it 10 p.m. I will be in bed by 10 p.m. The problem is people don't really respect their bedtime very much. And I want you to look at your bedtime like you would your second job. Let's just say you go to work at 8 a.m. Your job starts at 8 a.m. You're not going to show up at 10:52. You're not going to show up at 10:52 every day, because if you don't own the company, you're going to get fired pretty quickly. And in the rare case that you do own the company and you have employees, they're going to see your tardiness as the standard of minimum acceptable effort, meaning that they see you, monkey see, monkey do. They see you coming late, they are all going to reciprocate that. They're going to copy you. And so they'll show up late as well, because they see you do it, so it must be all right. And what happens when you have a bunch of lazy employees who show up late? Well, you have a pretty crappy company, and then eventually, no company at all. So it makes sense that we want to get to work on time, either because you own the company or you don't. It doesn't matter. You want to get there on time. Your bedtime is the exact same thing. So you start work at 8 a.m. here, you now start bedtime at 10 p.m. here. Don't be late. I don't think most people are inherently lazy when it comes to getting to bed on time. I think they just see other people not caring about their sleep at all, and so they think it's acceptable. But what happens is when you follow the general trend of what most people do, you get the results that most people have. And guess what? Most people aren't in shape. So it would make sense to do something a little bit different to get a different result. I'm telling you, you have to look at sleep a little bit differently. For the final time, when you train, you must first recover before you can grow. You cannot skip from training to growth without recovery. And the easiest, fastest way to fully recover from this training to get the maximum amount of growth as fast as possible is to stay in a state of complete rest. The most complete state of rest that you can possibly achieve is getting to bed, is sleeping. So it would make sense to prioritize that. So I'm going to assume going forward that you get the meals in on time that you set for yourself. And when you eat, you don't get distracted. And those meals are containing the foods that push you towards your calorie goals. They allow you to train well. You feel good digesting those foods. You can cook them fast. You can eat them quickly. And your appetite has since improved. But you're still noticing that lack of energy. Here's exactly what I want you to do right now. Pick a new bedtime. Now, your current bedtime is likely a range, so you're probably saying, I'm in bed between 11 and 11:30 p.m. every single night. First off, I would start to question, are you actually in bed at the range you're saying? Are you just saying that to say that? Are you laying in bed with nothing else to do but sleep between 11 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. every single night? Likely not. Some nights it's going to be 11 p.m., some nights it's going to be 1 a.m. The easiest way to determine your new bedtime is to look at when you wake up. And so let's just say you were up at 6 a.m. Now, when I say pick a new bedtime, I don't just mean pull a number out of your butt and then that's your new bedtime. There's a bit of a strategy that comes with it. Like anything, we want our bedtime to serve a purpose. First, we want to have around 7 to 9 hours of sleep at that bedtime. So if you're sleeping at 11 to 11:30, I think this is cutting it a bit late. So ideally, we'd want to bump this number up. Second, we'd want it to be realistic. Because if you're going to bed at 11 to 11:30, you're not going to set your new bedtime at 7 p.m., right? It's not realistic at all. So you want to make sure that this is something that we can adhere to. Finally, does it fit into our current schedule? If your shift ends at 8:30 p.m., again, 7 p.m. bedtime is not realistic. You're still at work. And so we want it to be able to fit in our schedule, be realistic so we can stick to it. And when we stick to it, we're able to get 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep every single night. If you can do those three things, I think you're ready to pick your new bedtime. Now, preferably, you want your new bedtime to be earlier than what you're currently dealing with, because if you're going to bed late, then we want to be getting to bed earlier. So let's just say your old bedtime was 11 p.m. Pick a new bedtime that's at least 30 minutes earlier than what you're used to. If your old bedtime was 11 to 11:30, let's shoot a little bit higher. Let's say 9:30 to 10. And yeah, this is a pretty drastic change to what you're used to. But again, if you want to get better results, you're going to have to do different things. You can reliably get between 8 to 8.5 hours every single night if you stick with this bedtime. The objective is to have a big enough range. That way, when we are in bed at 9:30, we're probably going to fall asleep at some point in between here from 9:30 to 10. Now, I'm going to show you how to fall asleep fast in the next section. But we want to make sure that we're in bed at this time with nothing else to do but fall asleep. So now that we've picked our bedtime, this is going to be our target. The reason why I did this first is so that we have our target to shoot for. Now we know what our objective is. How are we actually going to get to bed on time and not eat late every single night? So I'm going to put our target at the top of the board here. That way we're able to anchor everything we do from that bedtime. So our new bedtime target is 9:30 to 10 p.m. I'm going to start from the beginning. Let's say you have 4 meals per day. We got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you're eating these meals at 7 a.m., 1 p.m., 5 p.m., and 8 p.m. These are our meal timings for the day. Going forward, I'm going to assume that you get the meals in on time, that you don't delay them, and when you eat, you do not get distracted. So let's just say each meal takes you 30 minutes to prep, eat, and clean if you're cleaning dishes. So every single meal, this is 2 hours of eating per day. Again, you could take longer, you could take shorter. I think 30 minutes is a pretty solid time to prep, eat, and clean your food. Now we start our day by waking up at 6 a.m. But let's be generous and say you get up between 6 and 6:30. This is your wake up time. What do we do first thing in the morning that allows us to get these meals in on time, to stay efficient with our work, to stay efficient with our day? I'm essentially walking you through a full day routine. I'd say the first thing is to get water first thing in the morning, take a pee, go outside, get dressed, maybe you shower first, and then we eat. So you can see the amount of things that I'm doing here. None of these tasks include social media, games on my phone, watching movies, texting people, a bunch of calls, no distractions other than the actions that lead to me eating as fast as I possibly can. So these amount of tasks, the idea is that I want to shorten the amount of time that I spend from when I wake up to when I eat. I want to compress this time right here. And so I get water, I take a pee, go outside, get dressed, and then eat. Now we're eating. It's 7 a.m. I cook my meal. Let's say I have a protein shake, some pasta, and some chicken thighs, and some vegetables, and a banana. So I eat this meal, and I eat undistracted, and now it is around 7:30 a.m. at this point forward. Ideally, all my food is packed before I leave the house, and so I don't have to spend much time packaging my food. My food's already meal prepped. I already know what I'm going to eat going forward. I'm able to get my meals ready. Then I leave the house at 7:35, and let's say it's a 15-minute drive to work. Maybe it's longer for you, maybe it's shorter, who knows. Let's say it's 15 minutes, and you get to work at 7:50, and your work starts at 8 o'clock. Now you're essentially going to work from 8 to 1. So that's pretty much the next 5 hours. And during this time, ideally, like we talked about, you're drinking most of your water, meaning we're not taking in a ton of water during our first meal because we don't want the space in our stomach, our appetite, to be devoted to 0-calorie liquid. So we have a little bit of water in the morning to hydrate ourselves after 8 hours of sleep and not having any water. We have a little bit of water during our meals just because we want to. And then we drink a good amount of water. Let's say we have 1 cup here. We have 4 to 5 to 6 cups in between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. The water now stretches out our stomach and gives us the opportunity to then pound down a bunch of food in meal 2, which is eaten at 1 p.m. Now, ideally, this meal is something that's fast to eat. It's portable, it's fast to chew, easy to swallow, it's enjoyable, right? All the things that we talked about that benefit our appetite. And so you eat the meal. Let's say that's your lunch break. Then you eat from 1 to 1:30. Now, the Incredible Bulk is targeted not only to skinny guys who want to get jacked, but busy skinny guys who want to get jacked. Guys who work full-time jobs, who work really long hours, or business owners who are working around the clock constantly. It's not for people who just sit on the couch and I kind of want to get bigger, I'm not really sure yet. It's for guys that like, holy crap, my schedule is completely full. How am I able to get these meals in? You're who I make these videos for. And so I take it that you have some sort of lunch break. Maybe you take a break from your business work, or maybe you're taking your lunch break at your job from 1 to 1:30. And so you eat, you just chill out, take a breather, take a stop from your work, and then you get back into it. So from 1:30 now until 5, assuming that you work from 8 to 5, you get 8 to 9 hours of solid focused work in every single day. You work from 1:30 to 5. Once again, what is the objective? What are we trying to do? Not only getting our work done during this time and staying focused and not getting distracted, but we also are drinking a lot of water. And an easy way that I've found to get a lot of water in is to have a lot of electrolytes. Now, there's going to be a limit on how much water and how much electrolytes you can take in. You do not want to run into a hypernatremia situation where you're having almost an overdose of water. People can actually die from that. It's pretty easy to die from too much water. And so when you have too much water, you'll notice symptoms like headache, dizziness, a bit of nausea, and it's not fun because I've had it before myself. And so you drink as much as you're comfortable with, maybe drink a little bit more. So you drink during this meal, this 1 p.m. meal, but you're also drinking more and more water. So let's just say you have, I'm going backwards here, but we drink 1 cup here, we have 1 cup here, we have 4 cups here, we have 1 cup here, and we have 4 cups here. You might drink more, you might drink less, whatever. And if you're working a labor job or you're working outside in the heat, expect this number to go up. Don't just drink 4 cups because I said so. Drink until you're hydrated, until you're not thirsty, and drink a little bit more after that. Now it's 5 p.m. and you're getting off work. I'd recommend getting in a meal that is portable. Now, I hear a lot of guys that I talk to one-on-one, in the DMs and comments, they're saying, oh, I work a busy job and my commute to work is really long, so I'm not able to get the meals in because I have to get home and then I have to eat and then I have to do these chores. First thing, bring portable meals, eat on the road. And so you can easily bring a high-calorie bulking shake that includes oats, protein powder, milk, frozen fruit, peanut butter, honey, avocado oil. There's so many different things that you can put into a shake and blend it up into 1 small cup, no bigger than this Powerade bottle, and drink it in 3 minutes and easily pound down 800 to 1,000 calories. I'll put up this picture of the 36 foods and I'll highlight the ones that you can actually put in this shake, right? You can blend pretty much anything together. So we have this bulking shake and you can easily drink that on the way home. So let's assume you do that. You drink your bulking shake on the way home and it takes you 15 minutes to get home. So it's a 15-minute drive back home. Maybe it's longer, maybe it's shorter, whatever. And you get home, you unpack, maybe you take the dog out for a quick walk. You do whatever else you need to do, those different chores. And so let's assume that 30 minutes passes by in this time from 5 p.m. when you're done work to now 5:30. You've drank your shake, and that also serves as your pre-workout meal. And if you want, I personally do this. I have my pre-workout meal, and then I also have a few sweets before I hit the gym. So this could be, maybe you have a Rice Krispies, right? You have a Rice Krispies square before you leave for the gym. And so you get those extra carbs in. A shake is super digestible. It's really easy to process, especially if you're having those simple carbs, the honey, the fruit, some milk, some oats in there. Ideally, I would hold off on avocado oil and peanut butter because they're really high in fat, but you can always include them in there. I don't see why not. And so this shake is really easy to digest. Now you go hit the gym. So let's just say your gym drive is 20 minutes and you drink your pre-workout on the way to the gym and you're drinking a good amount of water. So let's say you have 2 cups of water from when you get home to when you hit the gym. Actually, let's up it. Let's say you have 3 big cups of water. You have 3 cups of water and you're driving to the gym. Driving to the gym takes 20 minutes and now you're at the gym. And let's say it's 6 p.m. 6 p.m. you're at the gym. How long does your workout take? That really depends on you. I don't know. But let's assume the average workout takes around 90 minutes. So let's assume your workout is 90 minutes. You work out from 6 to 7:30 and then you drive back home. That's 20 minutes. Guess what we got next? Post-workout meal. Immediately, as soon as we get home, we're having those simple carbs. We're having the foods that are able to digest, things that we enjoy eating, not having tons of artificial sugars, not having tons of fat. And so up until this point, we prioritized our water intake. We've had 1 cup, 1 cup, 4 cups, 4 cups, 3 cups, 4 or 5 cups at the gym, right? You're going to be drinking a lot of water at the gym. So let's say we have 4 cups at the gym. We have 4 cups here, 3 cups here. That's 7, 11 cups, 12 cups, 16 cups, 17 cups, 18 cups of water. That's about 4.5 liters. And then we get home. Are we going to be drinking 3, 4 cups of water right before we get to bed? No. There's 2 reasons for that. The first reason is that we're eating. We don't want to have a ton of that space being taken up by the water. That doesn't contribute to our calories. The second reason is that we're going to bed. So we don't want to have a ton of water that keeps us up at the middle of the night and forces us to get up to go pee, which also ruins our sleep. So we eat this final meal. Let's just say you have chicken and rice for your post-workout meal with a banana. And then you eat your food, takes you about 30 minutes. Now, we've covered everything up until this point. You drank your water, you peed, you went outside, got dressed, ate your food, you packed all your food, you had it pre-packed before you left, you've prioritized your water intake, you've worked hard, you've got the meals in on time, didn't get distracted, drank more water, got home on time, got the meals in, digested it, went to workout, drank a bunch of water at the workout. Now you've come home, eat your post-workout meal, and now it's 8:30. What do we do from 8:30 to 9:30? Look at this. We've done all this stuff, done all of our work, worked 8 to 9 hours, and got in our 4 meals, and got a workout in, and got a ton of water in, and improved our appetite, all before our bedtime target. This is time management at its core. And it looks really complex, but that's just because I'm drawing a bunch of stuff. Now it's 8:30. And so we have to prioritize getting to bed before this time. So we now have an hour from 8:30 to 9:30 to essentially get ready for bed. And the first thing that I suggest you do before you get to bed is to prioritize the things that you would normally do in the morning. So that would be packing your meals. That would be picking out your outfit. That would be picking out anything that you're going to be doing in the morning so that tomorrow morning it's all ready before you leave, right? We're not spending any time in the morning pre-packaging anything, rushing to make decisions. We have the time right now at night. Let's use it and do the right stuff. By the way, if you followed this up until this point, your appetite is going to be like supreme quality. Now, let's just say it's 9 p.m. and we have 30 minutes until we get to bed. What do we do up until this point? Because we've covered the entire day. Now we're getting ready for bed. How do we get ready for bed on time? I'll show you exactly how I do it. The only thing you need to pull this off is your phone. I want you right now to open up your phone and go to the clock app. And so what I want you to do is set an alarm for the time that you plan to get to bed. So let's just say you have this 30-minute range, set it for the top end of this range. So if your range is 9:30 to 10 p.m., set your alarm for 9:30 p.m. tonight, assuming that it's earlier than 9:30 at the time that you're watching this video. So I'm gonna go 9:30 p.m., whoops, right there. I'm gonna set that 9:30 p.m. alarm. When I have this 9:30 p.m. alarm set, this is when I want to be in bed at. By the time this alarm rings, I want to be in bed and have nothing else to do except go to sleep. Before that, I want you to set another alarm. And this is going to be your target alarm for when you want to start getting ready for bed. So in our example, we finished everything at 9 p.m. I also want you to set an alarm for 9 p.m. So I'm going to do that right now, just so I can do it with you. 9 p.m. Our alarm is set at 9 p.m. And so now it's saved here. I want you to keep those alarms on, and it's going to ring at 9 p.m. tonight. This is your telltale sign to stop whatever you are doing, whether you're watching a movie or doing work, especially if you're doing work. I promise you, I absolutely promise you that it is going to be easier to work harder the next day if you just get to bed on time and then get up earlier and do more work then. You'll be much more refreshed. You'll be able to think clear. You'll be able to get more done and be more productive and have more time throughout the day rather than trying to cram all your work in at night because you didn't work hard enough during the day. And so you stop what you're doing. This is your alarm to start getting ready for bed. From here until here, from 9 p.m. until 9:30, here's exactly what I want you to do. The first step is to still use the clock app, but I want you to go to the stopwatch. So it's 9 p.m., you've stopped what you're doing, and now we have this 30-minute window from 9 until 9:30 to get our nighttime routine done. Now, if you want to have more time to do your nighttime routine, just set this alarm earlier throughout the day. So maybe you set it at 8:30 instead of 9. Whatever. This is our target to stop what we're doing. This is our target to get to bed. Now you're going to go to the stopwatch and make sure that it's blank at 0. Next, you're going to hit start. So I'll do it with you. I hit start. Now the time is running. And so I'm going to let this time run. Then I'm going to do my regular nighttime routine. Nothing about my routine is going to change. You're not going to do anything fancy, no grounding, no red light sauna, no ice baths. Nothing is going to change about your nighttime routine. It is going to be the same routine that you do every single night. Now you typically, maybe you don't have a routine. Maybe you don't consider yourself someone with a nighttime routine. Everybody has things that they do before bed. Maybe you wash your face, then you shower, then you brush your teeth, then you walk the dog. Maybe you do these things in sequential order before you then get to bed. And so these things must be done before you fall asleep. If we can get these things done on time in between the time that we've set for ourselves to stop what we're doing and to get ready for bed, we will be able to get to bed on time theoretically every single night and never miss for the rest of our lives. So we're going to do our regular routine. This is where it gets a little bit funky. Step 4, you're going to do one task. So let's say your first task is washing your face. This is the first task on the list. You're going to do a task, and then as soon as you do a task, you're going to hit the lap button. So let's say washing your face takes around 1 minute and 30 seconds. You're going to hit the lap button, and you'll see that the lap button shows you the exact time you press the button at. That is a telltale sign that it shows you exactly how long it took for you to wash your face. What are you going to do next? This is, I guess, step 5. You're going to repeat doing a task, then hitting lap, doing a task, then hitting lap, doing a task, then hitting lap. And the entire time from start to finish, from when you start the stopwatch to when you end it, your phone is on the stopwatch screen the whole time, meaning you don't swipe off and then go swipe around and then go check Instagram and do a bunch of stuff. You stay on this timer screen the entire time. Your phone does not veer off. You don't go on YouTube. You don't go to your calorie tracker. You don't do anything. This stays here. And so this forces you not to use social media before you get to bed. And you're timing every single task. So you do your task and you hit lap. Now you can kind of use this as an approach to set PRs on how fast you complete tasks. I wouldn't look at it as some sort of race where you go as fast as humanly possible, but just work at a moderate pace, do your task, and then when you're done a task, hit lap and repeat. And you're going to repeat every single task that you do and hit the lap button until, I'll write step 5 up here. You are in bed, and the last thing you have to do for the day is stop the timer. And I guarantee you that if you do these things, you go in the stopwatch, hit start, do your regular routine, and as soon as you complete a task, you hit the lap button and you repeat that until you have nothing else to do but get to bed. I promise you the time that it took you to do all this stuff is going to be in between the alarm that you set and your new bedtime target. I absolutely promise you. Where it starts to veer off is if you go on Instagram. If you swipe off the stopwatch screen and you decide to go on Instagram or YouTube, or you decide to text somebody, none of that. We stay on this the entire time. Now you might be wondering, George, I'm just trying to fix my appetite so I can bulk better. Why do I have to become David Goggins? You have to become David Goggins because the more militant we are with our time, the more strict we are with how we approach every single task, the more time we'll be able to spend working, the more time we'll be able to spend doing the things we enjoy, because we're able to get the meals in, eat all of our meals, train hard, and get to bed on time every single night as fast as humanly possible, which now frees up the rest of our day to do other things that we enjoy. And so eating all of your meals, training hard, getting to bed on time is an absolute necessity. You're not going to be able to skip this and then make crazy gains. You have to do all three. And so the objective is to do all three as fast as humanly possible and as efficient as we can so that we have more time for what matters. If you follow this step-by-step process, I promise you'll be in bed every single night on time and you'll never miss. You'll only miss when you start to veer off from this plan. I've tried it, and I've tried it with the guys I work with one-on-one in the Incredible Bulk. It works every single time. It's never failed. So you do all of this, you get the meals in on time, you don't get distracted while you eat the meals that correspond with your goals, you're able to manage your time, manage your water intake, manage your workouts, train hard, and now you're able to get to bed on time. This is a lethal combo. But now you want to fall asleep fast, and I'll show you how to do that lightning quick. Because we could do all this great stuff, but if it takes you an hour and a half to fall asleep, it was kind of for nothing. Let's finish off the rest of this video. Now, getting to bed on time, of course, happens when you manage your time correctly, but falling asleep fast actually starts at the beginning of the day. So at the start of the day, I focus on getting in water, taking a pee, going outside, eating, doing these essentials as fast as I possibly can to then get to my meal. And then I get all my meals in on time. So if I eat 5 meals a day, I'm getting all of these meals in on time. I'm not getting distracted when I eat. And between these meals, I'm able to work as hard as I possibly can. So something that doesn't really get talked about enough, and I personally think it's the hardest part about bulking up, is not just the appetite, but being able to eat all of your meals, train hard, get to bed on time every single day consistently without stopping, while getting good at everything else in your life at the same time. And so your employer, if you work a job, your employer is not going to say, oh yeah, you're eating your meals? Sorry, I won't bug you with any work. The business is not going to come to a screeching halt in favor of you trying to get jacked. You have to get jacked while operating your business, while working your job. If you're a student in school, while studying for exams, you don't just stop trying to get jacked so that you can focus on this. You can do both at the same time. That's the magical thing about getting jacked, is that it's an activity that doesn't require every second of your day. If I'm trying to become the greatest guitar player of all time, almost all of my waking hours would be spent playing guitar. But if I'm trying to get jacked, I can't get jacked every minute of the day. I just have to eat my meals, train hard, get to bed on time, and then give that time to operate so that I can see those results. What I'm promoting here is working as hard as humanly possible to achieve every other goal in your life. Now, I'm someone who owns a business, but I also bodybuild as well. And so I want to ensure that I become the best bodybuilder I can possibly be while being the best business owner I can possibly be. And for me, my business is based around fitness. So fortunately, my bodybuilding supports my business. The better results I get, the more credible I look, right? If I get crappy results, or if I'm fat, or if I'm super skinny, I'm not very believable in the things I say. And so I have to demonstrate, not only to you guys, but to myself, that I can hold the highest standard of time management while trying to get jacked as a skinny guy. So what gets me the results I get while helping me get to bed on time and helping me fall asleep faster is to work as hard as humanly possible until output drops to counterproductive levels. What I mean by this is your ability to work hard as you work throughout the day. If this is the time you spend, and this is your ability to work hard, at some point throughout the day, your ability to work hard is going to peak. And it typically peaks not first thing in the morning. It's typically going to peak, at least for me, it peaks sometime in the middle of the day. But then I get to a point where if I'm working so consistently and so hard, and this isn't just on a daily basis, that can be measured over a week, for example, there's going to be a day or time in the day where your work per unit of time drops pretty hard. And so my objective is to work as hard as humanly possible and get to this peak and stay at this peak for as long as I possibly can until my output drops. And if it drops to a level where the amount of time that I'm spending is not worth the amount of work that I'm getting done compared to my peak, then I stop working and then I rest or I go eat. And so for me, I can easily work for 2.5 to 3 hours without looking anywhere else but my computer. Then eventually I'll get distracted. Maybe I'll go on social media, or maybe I'll go get up to take a pee. And then when I come back, my work output drops and it's hard for me to get back in that zone. That's when I know, okay, I've reached this point right here. Now it's time for me to go eat, or maybe it's time for me to go train, or maybe it's time for me to take a quick 10-minute nap, or maybe it's time for me to walk the dog outside. Maybe it's time for me to get to sleep. And so if you lose this output, you recharge, you get back to baseline, then you work, hit this peak, maintain that peak for as long as possible, output drops, you reset, go eat, and you repeat this cycle again and again and again. And over time, as you consistently work hard, your ability to work hard also increases. And this peak continues to rise until you're off the charts with how much work you can get done in a certain amount of time. Professional athletes, entrepreneurs, bodybuilders, these are people who are at the top of their game. They have the same 24 hours that you and I do. It's just that their ability to work in those 24 hours is substantially greater. And they do that day after day, again and again and again and again for years on end without stopping. And then they end up with the amazing result. If you can work as hard as humanly possible, essentially train to failure on how hard you can work until your output drops to a level where it's not worth it for you to keep working, then you go rest. Then you go eat as a reset. Maybe you go take a quick walk outside, and then you're right back into it. I promise you, your ability to work hard is going to increase. How does this affect your appetite? Because that's the topic of this video. It affects your appetite because now you give your body the time to digest. So if you're militant with your time, if you get the meals in, you work as hard as humanly possible, you get the meals in, you work as hard as humanly possible, and you continue to do this day after day, you are not only going to get the results of the hard work, but you're also going to get the results of the meals and the training, which leads to the physique. And so you can do both at once, which is what I'm doing right now. The reason why I'm able to document this so clearly is this is my life. This is what I do every single day. Up until a couple of years ago, I didn't do this. And so I went to bed and laid in bed pretty much wide awake for 30 to 40 minutes at night. I thought I had insomnia. But the reality is I still had a lot of work to do in the day. And so now it only takes me 5 to 10 minutes to fall asleep because I'm exhausted from all the work I'm doing. And so not only do I get the benefit of the hard work, but I also get the benefit of when I go to bed, I am exhausted. So this starts at the beginning of the day. That's why I'm so huge on getting the meals in that promote hard work so you're able to work as hard as you possibly can. And I think to cap off this video, work as hard as humanly possible until output drops to counterproductive levels. I think that's the key to everything. But if you want some more things that help sedate me and get me to bed earlier, I'd focus on the things that I'm doing before bed, as in when I'm getting ready for bed, and things that I do while I'm in bed to promote me falling asleep faster. So I'll split them up. First thing I do is to keep my final meal very small. For me, that's around 15 to 20% of my total calorie intake. The analogy I use for this is if you've ever worked a closing shift at a fast food place and you're about to close in 5 seconds, and then a customer comes in and asks, can I have 5 burger combos, 2 milkshakes, and 3 friggin' chicken sandwich wraps, whatever. They want these things, and you're like, shoot, we just cleaned all the equipment. We just mopped the floors. We just did all the cleaning for the opening crew tomorrow. Now we have to fire up all the equipment and then clean it again after, and it's pretty frustrating. That's kind of what's happening when you surprise your body with a massive meal right before you go to bed. Your body does not have the opportunity to digest that meal, to chill out and relax. Like I said, get to that parasympathetic nervous system. We're trying to get to that parasympathetic state where we can be resting and digesting. But if you surprise your body with a massive meal, now you have to fire up all the digestive systems again and then give it time to relax, which can easily take another 20 to 40 minutes or even longer for you to stop feeling so restless. That's not what we want. At least that's not what I want. I want to have a small meal. And like I said, I limit artificial sugars, saturated fats, try to keep protein pretty moderate, have foods that promote me getting to bed. Next, supplements. I'll run over this quickly. Talked a little bit about digestive enzymes, but with these, I'm kind of referring to supplements that help you fall asleep faster. So this can be minerals such as your magnesium. Magnesium has been clinically proven to increase testosterone. Why not take it? You could take melatonin if you need to fall asleep fast. I do this every now and again. This one's not clinically proven, but I find it works. Ashwagandha. Taking any of these will help me fall asleep much quicker. If I'm trying to fall asleep fast, I'll usually opt for magnesium and melatonin together. And I typically take these supplements 30 to 45 minutes before I get into bed, so that when I'm in bed, the supplement has been processed and is now in full effect. That way I don't have to wait for the effects to kick in. So I take it as soon as I start my nighttime routine, which for me is roughly 30 to 40 minutes. Finally, take a hot shower. A hot shower is very relaxing. The steam makes me feel sedated, but also it lowers your core body temperature. And so what happens is your body will cool itself down as a response to the hot water. And it doesn't have to be blistering hot, but just lightly warmer than lukewarm. Anything that you'd consider a hot shower, take that. It lowers your body temperature and the body will fall asleep much, much faster. And I think it's pretty much impossible to fall asleep if your body temperature is too high. And so if your body temperature is lower, that puts you in a state of complete relaxation, allowing you to get to bed. And this shower doesn't need to take longer than 5 minutes. So just shower 5 minutes, clean yourself up, and you're good to go. When I'm in bed and I have nothing else to do except stop my stopwatch, remember we had that from earlier, these are the things I do to help me fall asleep even faster. I eliminate excitement. So I don't watch a bunch of action movies. I don't go on social media on my phone. I don't play games. I don't talk to people or text or do anything like that. I just get to bed and try to read a book. For me, that's the Bible. For you, that could be another thing. Just something that doesn't spike up your heart rate. You're not trying to run or do a bunch of activity before you get to bed. You chill out. Next, I block out light and noise. You can block out light by getting blackout curtains. I block it out because I live in the lower part of the house, the basement. And so I don't have much light shining in. So for me, that's a plus. But you might be living in the middle of the city where there's a bunch of cars passing by or a bunch of people have lights in your building, or you can see lights from across the street, whatever. You want to block out that light as much as possible. And for blocking out noise, I have reusable silicone earplugs. And so you put these in your ear, it blocks out 95% of the noise. It muffles pretty much everything, which allows me to get to bed, fall asleep without hearing any loud crashes, any bangs, people knocking things over, footsteps above me, that kind of stuff. And when I really want to gas it, I'll do the earplugs, which I've been doing every single night since I found them. Absolutely works. I'll do the earplugs, and I'll also have noise canceling earmuffs on top, usually gunshot headphones. Because what are gunshot headphones good for? They're good for blocking out the noises that are the bangs, the crashes. And so I want to be able to block out those noises. I put them on top and lay on my back. But most nights, 9 out of 10 nights, I'll do the earplugs by themselves. That's enough. My third point relates to the light. Remove everything except your alarm. So if your phone is not your alarm and you have a designated alarm clock, I suggest you remove your phone from the room. There's no point in having it there whatsoever. If a notification goes off, even if it's there in the room and you're subconsciously thinking about it, if you have a humidifier that emits a small light, just these tiny things can negatively impact your sleep. I'd prefer not to have that. And so if I keep my final meal small, manage my supplement intake, take a hot shower, when I'm in bed, I read a book, I block out the light and noise, I remove everything except my alarm that emits light, whether I can see it or not. I know what time I'm supposed to eat my meals at. I get my meals in on time. When I eat, I don't get distracted. I manage my water intake. I manage my schedule around my training. My meals are portable. I eat the food that I enjoy. I'm able to get to bed at the times that I've set for myself, and I'm able to fall asleep fast once I'm in bed. So I do all of these things every single day with the sole purpose of improving my ability to process the food I eat. Because at the end of the day, if I cannot process the food or I do not eat the food, I will not grow. And I know that as a fact. So I will do everything in my power to make eating that food as easy as possible. It is my firm belief that if you work as hard as possible, you eat the foods you enjoy, you eat the meals on time, you eat completely undistracted, and you get to bed on time every single night, your appetite will improve. And so guys, my name is George Tressiter. I am the founder of The Incredible Bulk, and I founded The Incredible Bulk because I was the skinniest guy pretty much of all time, and all the fitness advice that I saw online didn't pertain to my situation. So I know what it's like to look online and look for advice, look for solutions for problems that technically don't even exist yet. My goal is to bring these problems to light for the skinny guys who want to get big. I don't do weight loss, I do weight gain. I get skinny guys jacked. And so if you want to get jacked, you can sign up for a roadmap at the first link in the description, and I will build a complete blueprint from start to finish, from where you are to your absolute dream physique, from the start, with all the meals you need to eat, all the training you need to do. You can check out the link in the description. It goes pretty deep into it. But guys, my name is George Tressiter, and I got nothing else to say. Hopefully your appetite improves from this video, and we'll talk soon.